Good morning. We are here this morning with Chris Ura, who is the founder of Sustain You and currently a strategic consultant for the Coalfield Development Group. And Chris has quite a background in social entrepreneurship, and that is our topic for the day, is what is social entrepreneurship? And Chris, that's my first question for you this morning is, we hear this term a lot, social entrepreneur or social entrepreneurship. But what does that really mean? What does that mean to you? And how is that different from regular entrepreneurship, or is it different? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. Social entrepreneurship as weighing the social impact of the community at the same kind of the same benchmark level as profit and other things that companies really judge themselves against. So I think that's the biggest differentiator between a social enterprise or a social venture versus a traditional venture, where maybe in a traditional venture, you're really just weighing your success on the profit of the entity, whereas a social enterprise or a socially focused business is looking not only at the profit of the business, but it's also looking at how does it affect the community, how does it affect the environment, how does it affect essentially, society as a whole. So it's not necessarily different because every business has an impact. It's just a matter of how you judge that impact and if you track it and if you consider it to be as important as traditional profit.
How did you become a social entrepreneur, or did you think of yourself in those terms when you got started, or was it just a passion that you followed?
I think like many entrepreneurs, you realize that what you're actually going to be a professional in is your field until you're actually in it. I have a very different background story than I think most people that started clothing businesses, at least. I think my story is pretty standard for entrepreneurs just because they come from every background and walk of life. And mine, really, it started out, I grew up in West Virginia. I was a football player as well as a student in high school, but I was really fast at age 15. So I got offered a scholarship to play football at Notre Dame. So I actually, so I went there to play football. And while I was in school, I started studying sociology. I was very interested in just like what makes society work, and got really passionate about nonprofit work and, how, essentially how could I make a difference in the world? And I thought that really at that time I was thinking like I should work for a nonprofit. Like that's what I should do when I graduate. That's the way I can make the biggest difference. But the way that my life kind of worked itself out, God's plan was a little different than my my thoughts, at least. So as soon as I graduated, I was a football player. I played all 4 years. I led it all 4 years, but I unfortunately didn't have the ability to go to the next level. So instead of doing that, I thought I wanted to be a strength coach as well, like either nonprofit work or a strength coach, two very different things. But so I took the strength coach route to start, and I was a personal trainer in Miami, Florida, and I got scouted to be a male model. So this story gets really weird and kind of funny, although at the same time. So within a year of graduation, I was like basically living in New York City. I was a Ford model, and I was basically taking pictures for a living, and I had no idea that that was the way it was going to be. And honestly, it's such a weird career path in general. I was really scratching my head like, God, what is this really the path for me? Like, am I supposed to do this? So in that process, so I was actually in New York for 5 years. I lived in New York for a little bit too. And I really wasn't into clothing at all. So this was just a total 180 for me. Like again, not my background, not my passion. But I was in these kind of meetings listening to people talk about clothing, and obviously I was around clothing a lot. And one thing about a model is that you're sitting in a boardroom when they're talking about pretty proprietary information, just because you're just standing there basically showcasing the garments, and they're not really thinking you're paying attention. So so I was listening to all this marketing information, sourcing information, how they were approaching the eco-friendly market and how that was kind of the next big thing. And this was in the early 2000s. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, like, is it really better to make things the way that they're describing it? And then countering that with, why is everything made somewhere else? Like what happened to making things in the United States? And so kind of drawing on my sociology background from college and drawing on my experience from being from West Virginia and understanding like, you know, if there really is a better way to do it, like why can't we do it in places like West Virginia, employ people and do it with materials that are not destroying, you know, the planet. So basically while in New York, I came up with the idea of Sustain You and just started writing a business plan. And I had some very supportive parents that encouraged me to come back home and try it out. And so I moved back in with my parents, you know, kind of the startup story, you know, 27, so I wasn't like super young, and living with my parents and, you know, basically trying to start this enterprise, Sustain You. And that's kind of how I got to the point that I did, at least to start it up.
Right. That is a fascinating story and one I haven't heard before. So that's great to know. Tell us a little bit about Sustain You. Tell us about that business that you founded.
So what I saw there was a gap in the market from a truly more sustainable option in apparel versus this greenwashing kind of marketing product. And so what I meant by that is that what something's actually made from, where it's made, it all contributes to the sustainability of the product. And really what I looked at was like from the fiber standpoint, you know, if you're going to make something, why would you use something that's requires fresh water and more growth? Why not use something from things that already have been used, like recycled items? So Sustain You was basically focused on making 100% recycled apparel and doing it for markets that traditionally use really fast fashion elements. So like the t-shirt giveaway at a college or a 5K. And so that was kind of the focus of that market. Really, the inspiration for the market came from playing football in college, because at Notre Dame, they have this t-shirt called The Shirt. Pretty original name for it, but they sell 160,000 of these a year. And Notre Dame's not a big school. It's just that people are that passionate about supporting the team and wearing this one shirt. So my idea was like, wow, you get everybody excited and really pumped up around this idea of, you know, of being, you know, a fan of Notre Dame. Like, what if you really use that like collective camaraderie for something bigger than just sports? So that's why that market was really appealing to me. And that's why I kind of started out thinking like, that's how we'll be different. And so that's what we did. We started making 100% recycled USA made t-shirts really for the collegiate market and for the kind of giveaway market. And it was very different than what other people were doing, which helped us grow very quickly and start becoming distributing nationally within a few years. And so we were very fortunate to kind of get that opportunity to do that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. What advice might you give to someone who's thinking that social entrepreneurship might be something that is interesting to them or something they want to explore further?
I think the biggest thing is that, I think you mentioned it, you feel passionate about what you're doing. I think there's a numbers game with everything, you know, just like any business, you have to have the insight or at least have somebody who you know or works with you or for you that has that insight. But the passion element is something you can't fake, and you really can't, it will go away if it's not real.
Would you, looking back on your experience with Sustain You, how you fell into that idea and then took it and ran with it and made it the business that it became, would you have done anything differently?
I mean, I think there's a ton of things that I would have done. Go through each year, you know, and give like, okay, we could have done that. We could have done this a little better. But truly, like if I were to do that, I would never have started it in the first place, knowing that what I know now, because, you know, it was a scary thing to do during the recession of 2008 and really no business experience. And now understanding kind of what it does take. I mean, I was very fortunate that I had the ability. I wasn't afraid to ask questions and I wasn't afraid to ask for help. So I think like, yeah, I could definitely critique a lot of the different things, but I don't think it would have turned out as good as it was or is if I would have changed anything. You know, just like life. I think if you change one decision, potentially you're changing the outcome of the whole thing. So you know, I'm glad for the mistakes, although they still hurt, and trust me, they don't go away, even though people say they do. You know, I think I can think of orders that we messed up and be like, oh man, like, you know, it's things. But you know, it all balances itself out when you continue to move forward and you don't you get stuck in that rut or get stuck in that mistake. You got to get out of it. So yeah, I think for me, I wouldn't change anything. I would, you know, I'm very fortunate, as I mentioned before too. I think people came into my life or were part of my life that also helped me a great deal in mentorship, that were successful in business, that, you know, either were from West Virginia or from Notre Dame, that really kind of saw some potential in me and helped me along. So it was not, you know, just me, you know, willing myself through this. It was definitely, there was a lot of help.
Right. And if you had to give one piece of, just one piece of advice to an aspiring social entrepreneur, what would that advice be?
Well, I think that if you have a concept or you have an idea, I think you have to look at it and be able to understand how can this idea potentially create the outcomes that I want. You know, is this a vehicle? It's not going to be the silver bullet. So I don't think you should get too frustrated if you think that this, you know, it's not big enough or it's not, because you really never know. I mean, you never know. Like one domino, you know, all it takes is one to fall over, and other things fall too. So I think that you know, I would say if I had one piece of advice, I would say, you know, if you feel passionate about it today, try to write one page about it. Like if you can write one page and just summarize the idea, you know, same as a story, like beginning, middle, end. If you can do that, you have a start. And then in a week from now or 2 weeks from now, if you still feel like you could write another page, then I think you've got something. If it's kind of become tedious and you don't really want to write it, and it's kind of, then you shouldn't do it, because like I've probably written and rewritten the Sustain You business plan upwards of 50 times. I mean, and that's not an exaggeration, just because you always have to be evolving your thought process and how you're approaching markets. And when things change or you enter new markets, you have to be able to really articulate that. You have to write it out. So if this idea or this concept is truly something you're passionate about, you will not get sick of talking about it or writing about it. So I think that's one piece of advice that, you know, could be used.
That's great. That's great. Well, Chris, I wanted to thank you for your time today. I'm sure that if students or others want to reach out to you, if that's okay if they do that, via email or telephone, and continue to seek your advice,